Are you feeling negative in your own home? Are you the cause of that, maybe? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Neil Fellows, and if you're like me, you might recognise that your health is unique to you, and maybe you're interested in learning and understanding a little bit more about your health and well-being, and perhaps trying one or two new things with a view to seeing what feels good. If that's you, then why not subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to get notified of all of our latest uploads. This week, my guest is house healer and alternative life coach Tim Walter, and we're talking about clearing your home of negative energy. So Tim, when we talk about negative energy in your home, what are we talking about?
Well, it's the sort of thing that everybody comes to that sort of subject with a different viewpoint. So the way that I refer to it, really, what I'm looking for, if I'm looking into a home as a house healer, then negative energy is all sorts of different things. But primarily, I think that most people think about it as being, they walk into a home or they sit in their own home and they just feel like, there's no life to it. There's no joy in the house itself. It's not doing anything to add to the person who's living there, to add to their experience of life, really. So overall, the sort of feeling of the house is quite flat, or it's just meh, there's nothing that's being kind of invigorated by it.
We've talked previously about some of the impacts of geopathic stress, but what are some of the other things that could be having an impact on the energy in a home?
It's really to do with the whole relationship of the person and the space. And that, on a very physical level, is about the person's attitude to what is in the space around them. If they don't like the room, if they're renting an apartment, for example, and actually they've got no control over the decoration, they're not allowed to change that, but they've decided they're going to put up with some really horrendous wallpaper or something like that, for example. I mean, it's a bit of a silly example, but it's something like that. The person, every time they sit in that apartment and they look at this wallpaper, is going to feel like, oh no, it's going to affect them, even if it's a subconscious level. Now that you can take to another extreme of where, if you have items of furniture, perhaps you've moved in with a new partner or something like this, and there are items of furniture that you actually don't like, you don't find them attractive, they're not functional perhaps, or they might even be damaged. So all of these things affect an individual and the way they feel about what's around them. So those are the sort of things that we'd want to be aware of on a very, very practical level. You can take this all the way down the extremes of, or the scale of how I work as a house healer, which comes up into very esoteric and more mystical sort of approaches to reality. But let's keep it maybe up in the physical realm for the moment.
Yeah, I suppose there's also things like there's dust and there's junk potentially in the house as well sometimes for some people. And
yeah, I mean, there's again, in the extreme of that, if we think about I mean, human beings generally are actually quite messy, that's a fact. Most of us don't really enjoy doing the housework and doing cleaning and all this sort of stuff. And so, yeah, inevitably, keeping a house clean and clear is a really, basic way of keeping the energy flowing in a house, making it nice. You feel you'd like to, if you're going out for a special meal, for example, as an individual, then you'd like to maybe dress up, look a little bit smarter. You feel good. Same thing. Look after a house, you feel good. The extreme of the not dusting and not doing the housework, of course, is where you get into a hoarding situation. And that, if you want to think about in the physical sense, the worst case of a house affecting the individual in a negative way, then if you have a hoarder in the family or a hoarder is living alone, then that's the worst sort of heavy physical energy that you can have, because they just can't move. And clearly that is reflecting some kind of psychological imbalance, shall we say. So it's a difficult picture. We can't say that the hoarding, the aspects of the house, all of the junk around them is just detrimental and negative. That's not the only thing in their reality that is detrimental or negative. Clearly the hoarding reflects something else that's happening, but it's both.
Yeah.
The big thing about that is that if you have a parent in a family that is prone to hoarding, then that behavior is going to affect everybody in the family. And so in that instance, you've got a very serious effect on perhaps the children of the family. And that can be very upsetting, actually, because it can almost be traumatic.
It can also be subtle things as well. They're saying about hoarding. I mean, I remember calling on somebody's house one day, and they opened the door, and all the way down the hallway there was like boxes after boxes after boxes, and I'm quite a big person as well, and I just imagine that as they were trying to come to answer the door, all of these things that they've had to climb over, and you just think of the energy that it takes to even open your front door. It must have a detrimental impact on an individual.
I was going to say that even if you think about it symbolically, and you think about all of this stuff that is just in a corridor, for example, in a hallway leading to a front door, symbolically that's just dead weight. It's just not doing anything. It's not adding anything to that person's life. It's blockage, and we talk a lot about flow of energy and about life force and that sort of stuff. And symbolically, it's not going anywhere.
I think for me as well, one of the other things that has an effect on the energy in my home is music. Often, we play a bit of background music during the day while we're working, if neither of us are on calls or interviews and things like that. And in the evening, to have some music on in the background, especially if it's the right kind of music that's uplifting or chill out music, that kind of thing.
Everybody sort of, everybody reacts to the music in similar ways. I mean, they may be individually different, but it's similar, isn't it? It's, as you say, it's uplifting. Quite often, people, Feng Shui practitioners use sound in their clearing. So sound is really important to the human being. Classical music is very, very usually, traditional classical music rather than the disharmonious schools of music are very life affirming and very positive for living things. When you get more disharmonious music, and even some of the, I hate to say it, 'cause I'm going to sound like a fuddy-duddy, but some of modern pop music, it's not necessarily very life-enhancing. It's actually very, very driven to the lower chakras, the energy system, and it's not necessarily uplifting in the sense of going to the heart area or the higher chakras. So we know that music positively affects plants, for heaven's sake, and if it positively affects plants, then it will positively affect the human being. And plants and this sort of thing, bringing the natural world into your living environment in the home, is a very good and positive thing to be able to do to actually increase the just the general ambience and the positive feeling of a house. It's again, if you think about the science says, that tree bathing, so spending time in a woodland outside, there are positive physiological effects of that. Now, obviously, we're not saying, right, bring the trees inside, but the more plants and the more living things that you have around you, that does help the individual for sure.
Yeah, sure. So we're talking about clearing negative energy from the home. If you're really enjoying what Tim is saying here, please do give us a thumbs up, because that does the channel a favour. Also, Tim, we just kind of alluded there to how you could clear negative energy about bringing plants into the home, but what else could people do?
Well, I think the main thing, when we talk about the physical things, we talked a little bit about hoarding, but if we think about things like damaged furniture, which we touched on earlier on, those sort of things, they need to be addressed. The simple housekeeping in that sense, actually paying attention to, when you step into a room, if you pay attention to what is in that room, and how you feel as you step into each of the rooms that you actually have in which you live, then you can start to see that you actually are affected by rooms differently. And this is really just a basic exercise in mindfulness, because most of the time we're not aware of how we feel as we go around our living environment, because it's so familiar. But if you spend the time and just take that time and actually focus inside and see how you feel and react. Then you can also then focus in on individual things, items that need to be changed in order to change the way you feel. And so those things need to be removed. They need to be recycled, upcycled, got rid of. Somebody else can make use of them probably. The other thing is to also be really, really aware of how much of the furniture you have in your house and clothing even is secondhand, because in the slightly less physical world of the house heating work that I do, we do find examples where individual items of furniture can cause changes in behavior of people. I'll just give you a quick example, which was actually one of my house healing students did a clearing for somebody, a lady who had a young child that was still in nappies, and she was having all sorts of trouble with this little toddler. Now, of course, we know that toddlers are classically difficult to deal with. You know, that's what toddlers do. That's their job. They're difficult. But this little one was not sleeping well, and the mum was getting driven to distraction. And my student was asked her all the standard questions, went through things, couldn't understand what it was. And then she sort of thought, oh well, hang on, what about, have you had anything new in the baby changing area, in the you know, the nursery? And the mother said, no, there's nothing new there. Well, I did get a changing table recently. Oh, where did you get that from? Oh, well, it was gifted to us by a friend. Oh, really? Right. So this lady, my student, had a photo of this thing and cleared it. So it's a second-hand object from somebody else, cleared it because she found a lot of detrimental energy associated with that object. And so that was removed. So there's a lot of, I won't go into details of what it was, but it was detrimental energy, it was negative energy. And as a result, from the very next day, that toddler slept like a log. You know, the mother is like, what the heck did you do? That is amazing. So that's a life-changing thing, simply by clearing and being aware of one particular piece of furniture that the toddler was in direct contact with, which is really interesting. Now, that's just anecdotal.
Yeah.
Science has never looked at this sort of thing. So there's no kind of scientific proof. But when we start to look at the nature of reality, then, yeah, there are all sorts of things that kind of start to link into it. But
I'm really curious
yeah.
now we've talked about that, because I suppose in the same way that you can build a house, as we talked about last time, you can build a house on a piece of land, and that land may have history. I suppose furniture, in a way, has a history, and can, I mean, wood, I guess, can absorb energy.
Oh yeah, yeah. Everything. I mean, the way that we work, the way that we look at it as house healers, is that absolutely everything. I mean, we look at it to the extreme that everything is alive, everything has a consciousness. Now, you don't need to look at it like that, but if you think about a favourite grandparent, when they pass over, quite often you receive something of theirs, and you receive something of theirs because it's a treasure that you want to hold and keep as a memento. But actually, you know, if you think that sometimes, I mean, in the old days when you know, granddads, for example, would have smoked a lot, you know, you might have a cigarette case, and that would have been carried with that person. That would have been within their energy field. You know, we know that there's an electrical energy field around every human being.
Yeah.
That item of possession, that possession would have picked up some of that energy from the electrical energy field, or you know, if you want to describe it like that. But emotionally, it would have picked up some of the energy of granddad. So this is the whole. I mean, again, when you get woo-woo, this is where, you know, mediums will pick up information about a person from an object. Psychometry, they call it.
Yeah.
You don't need to go that woo-woo. There are so many examples of the feeling of a person that's lived with a piece of furniture remaining with that piece of furniture. It's rather like taking an organ out and saying give that organ to another person. Heart transplant, for example, we know that the receiver starts to sometimes take on some of the aspects of the person whose heart has been transferred.
No, it does sound kind of strange. It may sound kind of strange to some people who are new to the channel and maybe listening to this. But the thing I'm kind of interested in as well here is because animals can sense things. You know, dogs can sense people, cats can sense energy. So why couldn't human beings do exactly the same thing?
Yeah, and I think that's exactly where I come from, really. I think it's very difficult for people that are not used to speaking in these terms to come to terms with it. And there's no reason why they should. You know, it's not my job to be influencing somebody to say, well, actually, you know, you really need to pay attention to your environment because it's not being helpful to you. I mean, we do need to be a bit careful about kind of putting our we need to be careful about sort of judging somebody else with our view of life when they are actually quite happy living the way that they are. And, you know, sometimes people are even happy in their unhappiness. So, you know, it's not our role to sort of be evangelical about this stuff. So I think, you know, if there's a person that has a particular issue and say, you know, medical practitioners, general medical practitioners have not been able to understand what might be causing it. I mean, typically, you know, last time we spoke, we talked a little bit about sick building syndrome, and sick building syndrome is made up of a lot of things that mainstream medical practitioners do not understand. They don't know why people are affected by buildings. The same thing can be applied to why are some people, and it's only some people, of course, affected by some things.
Yep.
You know, it's as simple as that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there are many strange things in this world which mainstream thinking doesn't encompass.
Yeah. So, Tim, from what we've talked about today, let's talk about challenge. So what would be one thing that people could take away and try based on our discussion, just to explore this subject?
Yeah, I think really it's actually what I touched on earlier on, which is walk around the house. You know, start at your front door and take a tour of your own house and be incredibly mindful of how you feel and be very observant as to where your gaze is drawn. Okay, so be really aware of what you have in your house, how it's decorated, what items are there, and simply see how many, you know, do a little list if you want, how many things that, as you walk around, take the full tour, in which room, how many things actually do you think, you know, is it, you know, is it aesthetically pleasing? Does it please you to look at? Does it please you to use? Is it functional? So those are the positive things. Or is it damaged? Is it actually something that you don't really want there? Is it in the way even? You know, can you fully open a door and get into a room? You know, all of these things are actually quite important. So just, that's my challenge, would be just walk around the house and be observant and make a note of actually where are the little snags that you could improve upon, either by getting rid of something or by fixing it or by changing it in some way.
So as a wellness explorer, I'm always curious and I'm always fascinated, especially when we start talking about things like, does furniture hold energy? Could a piece of furniture that you've been given, or that maybe you got off free cycle, or something that's been handed down, could that actually hold an energy from the person that gave it to you? And what about things that are handed down through generations, rings, jewellery, and things like that? Music's fascinating. I'm sure you've got your favourite tunes. I'm sure you've got songs that you sing along to. I'm sure you've got songs that you turn off. So music affects us all in different ways, and it can affect us emotionally. Why not play more music that makes you feel good? Pictures is another interesting thing as well. I mean, it's like, you know, you've got pictures on your wall, and when you look at them, do you go, when I look at that image, does that bring back happy memories? Are you going to take Tim's challenge? It could be life-changing for you if you just give it a go. Why not? You can see my findings from this challenge in our challenge roundup video, which is a monthly summary covering all the challenges our experts shared. To get that video and all our latest health and wellness uploads, including interviews and reviews, subscribe and hit the bell so you get notified whenever we post. And if this channel can help your friends and family, please share it with them too. Also, if you want to get proactive with your health, Total Wellness Club are developing health quests over at questly.life. Join while we're developing the site and get access to health quests that immediately personalise your health. You'll get to identify which of 10 critical health categories need your attention. You'll be able to track your progress and you'll be able to help us develop the platform. I'll put a link in the description below and I'll see you in the next video.